I've known James through the gram, and as I was scrolling through hundreds of feeds, I was totally fascinated by his craftsmanship and the attention to details that he puts into his work. And so I started following him, and after a while I took the courage to DM him, and today we have the pleasure to have him on the show. And I'm excited, and I'm a little bit scared to see where this conversation will go, but let's see what happens. My name is Gianluca Cinquepalmi. You are listening to GLC Live, my podcast dedicated to business design. I'm an educator, design entrepreneur, and best-selling author. This show is dedicated to designers, creatives, and entrepreneurs that, like me, want to inspire, challenge, and disrupt the business and design industry. In this episode, BadAss Branding with James Martin. Ciao, James, and welcome.
Hello, mate. How you doing? All right?
Oh, fantastic. I'm so happy to have you on the show.
That was one beautiful intro. I'm going to carry you around in my pocket as like my personal motivator.
So, James, for the people that don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your craft? What do you do? Anything you like?
Yeah, sure. So, my name's James Martin. A lot of you may know me, or if you don't know me, on Instagram, it's my handle's Made by James, and YouTube Made by James. And I am a creator focusing on logo design. I've got a design agency here on the south coast of UK called BadAss Design Co., where we create all sorts of wonderful brand goodness, websites, print. But yeah, for me, I personally specialize in logo creation and telling stories through visual identities.
That's
Basically,
awesome.
Basically, yeah.
And James, through your work, and as I said, I truly love your amazing work. And one particular thing that I notice is that you can be considered like an old school designer, meaning that you do a lot of craft and a lot of handmade drawings.
Yeah.
And my students sometimes are a little bit hard on those. They reject that idea of creating first. So how important is the craft of each and every single design, and how are you approaching your design process?
Yeah, I suppose, if we go way back to the beginning, I've always, even before I was a logo designer, I was always an artist. I grew up drawing, copying comic books, drawing on the walls, which my mum and dad still hate me for. But yeah, so, basically what I've done is I've taken a passion of mine and used that skill to, within my niche now, which is logo design. So yeah, ultimately it does come down to process. And as you say, I probably am a little bit old school in that regards, because there aren't many logo designers. There's still a fair few, but there aren't a huge amount, obviously, with the invention of the iPad and Adobe Illustrator, all these kind of wonderful bits of software that I still use. They tend to kind of skip that process. But again, it's one of those weird things that we can talk for hours about. Sure. Process. Because everybody's process is different. I personally love, the sketch process. I think for me, it brings a lot of emotion. I think I can create stuff a lot quicker than I can on a computer. I can get my ideas from my brain onto a sketchbook a lot quicker. I personally enjoy that process a lot more than, I think we're all in front of screens far too long anyway. I think that the less time I can spend in front of a computer, the better. Yeah, so for me, it's all about, finding a process that works for you. And I think the problem with drawing is that people have this perception of that drawing has to be good. And I think that's why a lot of people don't draw as much as they should do, because they're worried about, is it good enough? Whereas if you just see drawing as a part of a process for idea creation, then it doesn't matter whether it's good, bad, indifferent, because it's It's about the idea. You're not going to give, for example, I can only obviously solely talk about this with reference to logo design, but I can't pick up my sketchbook and say, here's your logo. I still need the computer to make it into a fully functioning brand asset that they can take on and do whatever they want with. But for me to get to the computer, all that goodness for me happens in a sketchbook. But again, I'm not going to preach about sketching because I know everybody's different. But
Yeah.
for me, I find it works wonders.
Do you think it's also that the fact that you are doing so much work on paper allows you to add value to your work? Because the people, I mean, there is that concept. Because let me rephrase. You can go online and buy a logo for $5.
Yeah.
Made by a machine or made by a freelancer or whatever.
Yeah.
Don't you find that also the fact that you are truly crafting something custom made for somebody, it adds that value to your clients that says, look, this is made just for you by hand, and
Yeah.
it carries an interesting extra value, like you said, the story.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right, and a lot of people, I mean, haven't checked it out, go check out my Instagram account. But a lot of people a fair few people find me on Instagram, and that's where I show a lot of my deep process stuff. And clients come to me saying, "I love your process. Can we work together?" They don't go,
Yes.
"I love that logo." They say, "I love your process."
Absolutely.
Because I think what they can see by me sharing that process is how much effort goes into it, how unique I make it for the individual client or the individual project I'm working on. And they can see the time and effort that's gone into that crafting of a particular element. Not any logo is the same. There's always a story. There's always a reason. I think that's something that not necessarily a lot of logo designers are missing a trick on, but some people don't like sharing their process. For me, I think it's all about the process. There's a lot of people who can create a beautiful logo, but why is it beautiful? How have they got from nothing to that? Nothing to something. What happened in the middle here? And I think that's a lot of, some people are scared about showing that, or they're scared about telling people how they come up with ideas because they're worried people might steal it. And I think ultimately trying to explain that personal journey from, literally absolutely nothing, absolutely no idea what I'm going to do, to all the way to this thing with all the story. I think that's all the magical bit. It's not the end bit. I think it's all the stuff in the middle. And you're definitely right. I mean, the value that I think that brings to a company, an individual, when I give that to them, they suddenly have this like amazing feeling of ownership. Do you know what I mean? They know what this was made purely for me and for me only. It's not from a stock library. It's not bought for, as you say, $5 and then probably sold a few more times for $5 to other people. It's all made totally unique and totally bespoke to the client. And as I said, I mean, I offer my sketches as a part of that process.
Oh,
do you know what I mean? So when they come to me, I say, look, you can have all my sketches. So I send them my sketches along with my breakdown and my mock-ups and the final files, so they can, share it with the world. They can put it up in their toilet if they want. I don't know, frame it. I don't know. But everything I create is for them. So I freely give it to them. And that's something else I think does add a little bit of value, is that extra step. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm working with a company here in Italy that is promoting exactly that. The Made in Italy is trying to help the craftsmen to connect through technology to a wider audience, because sometimes they don't have that. And we were having extensive discussion with my friend David about how essential as a humanity is to preserve that.
Sure.
And both of us feel very strongly, although none of us are craftsmen in leather or wood.
Yeah.
we absolutely love that process, and we see how hard it is for a craftsman to survive.
Yeah.
Because more and more people, even big corporations, big brands, they are going away from Italy. They are going to produce in other countries where it's cheaper.
It happens over here as well. Yeah.
Exactly. Now Britain had a history of car manufacturing which is almost died now.
I don't think there's hardly any. Yeah.
And it's crazy because there was Aston Martin or Lotus or beautiful, and you lost a huge part of your heritage.
Yeah, very much so.
And that's the work that people like you, and although we are young, we try to bring that back and say, guys, this is important. This is important that is maintained, because when that is gone, it's gone forever.
Well, it's very difficult for it to come back once it's gone, isn't it? But I do see very much so, like, there's a lot of small, not necessarily car manufacturers, because that's quite a big industry and expensive to set up. But there's definitely a bit of a movement happening especially over the last 5 years, of small independent, people starting back up, getting back to, made in Britain, made in UK, working with their hands, the proper craftsmen, the big businesses of, prefab houses, or, people are now kind of getting in, like, really high skilled carpenters to build oak frames and stuff like that. So there is a shift happening. But as you say, I mean, it's, once you lose these things, you lose a little slice of, yourself, your history, your country. Yeah. But, what can you do? Unfortunately, money rules everything for people, doesn't it? So,
yeah,
I mean,
but I think also the current situation, in a way, this is for sure something that I experienced being away from my own country for more than 10 years.
Yeah.
And although I'm back the worst possible time, I was very grateful, because I'm like, okay, I can buy the vegetables that are grown
next door,
yeah. Right? While when I was in Asia and in other countries where they don't have that, and everything was imported from whatever, China,
Italy,
or Italy, sometimes.
Yeah.
And of course, it was also much more expensive. I'm truly appreciative of that. So
yeah.
I think people are starting to change also their mindset and try to think, now that we are in this, forced isolation, or with this social distancing, also they are
cocooning. I like to call it cocooning.
I love this cocooning.
Yeah, it's much more nurturing. It's a time to grow, not isolate.
It is.
Yeah, but, I mean, you're 100% right, and people. This will. I truly believe the situation that we're in will change the way people do things forever.
Yes.
I know we're going to be allowed to go outside. We're going to be allowed to socialize. That's all going to come back. But I think people's mindsets of how they work, I do believe big corporations will suddenly start to think, we've been, just as effective with people working from home remotely. So therefore, that automatically makes people's lives better, their families' lives better, because they get to see their kids, their family. The big business is saving hundreds of thousands of pounds on rent and all this kind of stuff, travel. I truly believe that this will, I mean, that's just one example, but I truly believe this will change the way the world works forever.
I hope,
but in a positive way. In a positive way, I think.
Yeah, I believe. And back to the discussion that we were saying about the value of something that's crafted. I want your opinion on something. I don't actually remember where I read this.
Yeah.
Or if I actually read it, or it's just something that
just a
I
dream.
came out. No. Sometimes when I work on lecturing, sometimes you write and you kind of lose track of what you have been doing and where the reference came from, or some stuff.
I can't even remember waking up this morning, mate. So don't you worry about it.
So when we talk about branding, particularly, we say that not necessarily a logo, and I want to be super specific with you. a logo doesn't need to describe, but it needs to identify. And I've been fighting a little bit this. I want to share with you this small peel of lecture that I give when I teach branding.
Sure.
And as an academic, I always saw a lot of people trying to define this mystical process of branding and, oh, it's a gut feeling. And I always went, maybe it's my heritage. And I said, listen, a good brand was designed in the old days for only two reasons: to identify origin or ownership.
Yeah.
And that's it. So either was, this comes from Greece because you were doing some vase with a particular technique, or you were just, literally marking kettles.
Yeah, or like Murano glass from like Venice, or that kind of thing, wasn't it? Yeah, that heritage, or Murano from Murano. That's what I should have said. Yeah.
It is in the Venice region.
Yeah. Sorry, my geography isn't as good as my drawings.
Yeah, but and that carried an important value. Of course, now we are losing a lot of that.
Yeah.
And now there is this, at least with the client that I had, and I don't know if you had the same, people that are making cakes, they believe that their brand, their logo should show a cake. And I sometimes fight against that, because I always ask them, well, what if you want to do cookies at one point? What if what happens to that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very important there's a big difference between a logo and a brand. It's super important to understand. So obviously, I know you might not like this because I'm going to say it anyway, but the branding is how, it's an emotion, how you feel when you put on those Nike shoes, how you feel when hopefully I might get some Nike shoes now, but, and so the kind of identity is the more tangible stuff, like your business cards or your letterheads or your signage and all the rest of it. And then we have a logo. Do you know what I mean? So a logo, for me, I think it's very important to kind of get this kind of straight. I think the logo is a very small piece of a much bigger picture.
Absolutely.
So that, with that kind of being said, so yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, it's kind of, what is the role of a great logo? Is that the kind of thing that you're asking?
Yeah. Yes.
So to kind of, I think the role of a good logo is to facilitate all those things I just said before this. Okay. So a good logo, as I said, should answer, it needs to be memorable.
Exactly. That's the part that I was saying.
Yeah.
You need to identify, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, if you are a cake shop, the obvious way is to go with a cake. But I can guarantee you there's, as you say, I mean, what's the longevity with that? How timeless is it? How long will it last? Are you able to grow with it? I think those are very important questions that people should ask themselves when they're going through this process. Because as you say, if they do cookies, does it make sense? If they want to go into home delivery of other bits and pieces, does it work? Right. Probably not. So yeah, I would say the job of a good logo is to be memorable, be unique, but basically it is the most important thing when it comes to brand recognition. I mean, that's another really important thing. So yeah, to break that down in simple form, because I know I'm babbling now, because I'm thinking. So yeah, I can't think and talk at the same time, as you might have noticed. Okay. So yeah, basically memorable, unique, and it needs to be able to facilitate everything that the brand's about, and that needs to be, especially in this day and age, very versatile. Because it needs to be big, it needs to be small, it needs to be maybe embroidered, it needs to be maybe screen printed, it maybe needs to be stamped, it maybe needs to this. So I think when it comes to, I think if I could impart some knowledge for any young logo designers out there, one of the biggest things that you can do is ask your clients a very simple question, how is it going to be used and where is it going to be used? Because that also dictates the mindset of where you can go with it.
because there's no point having, say if you've got a clothing apparel company that comes up to you and goes, yeah, it's going to be embroidered, screen printed, rubber stamped, all this kind of stuff. There's no way that you can create anything crazy intricate or over elaborate, because it won't embroid well, it won't print well, it won't look well, good small on tags and stuff. So I think that's a really important thing to understand when it comes to creating a logo and the identities that go with that, merchandise and all the rest of it, is think of the application before the creation, because that will kind of guide you a bit as well.
And James, in your opinion, because this show is all about business design, right?
Yeah.
And generally speaking, what have you encountered that business people didn't necessarily get about branding or design that you wish they would get? Because the easy part for me was always telling them that when I was going through the process of designing a brand for them, and I was asking them, $100,000, $200,000, or $50,000, they were all like, "Oh my God, this is so expensive.
Yeah,
why am I paying so much for this little thing?"
Yeah,
that's the obvious one, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I think the biggest, I wouldn't say budgets, and I would probably go back to the client a bit more. And, what I find is that people want to kind of run before they can walk. I think that's the biggest issue I've found with working with clients, big and small. So they want the finished product before even really figuring out who they are. And that's something, and that's why I find, it's really important. Something that I hit home with all of my clients is, a value proposition, that for me. So when I say value proposition, I mean things like, who are you servicing? What do you do? What value do you provide? What makes you different? Because I think we can only create a brand around stuff once we truly know who we are. We can't go and sell crap and do all this kind of stuff if we're, we don't know who we are. So I think that's the biggest thing I've found is like people just go, I want a cool logo and I want to put it here and I want to put it there. And I go, okay, so discovery stage, this James kicks in, like I need to get the information out of them so I can create what I want to create. So I said, like, so, how are you going to engage with your audience? What tone of voice do you have? What are your values? All these kind of things. And they don't know the answer to any of these questions. they're like, I haven't even thought about that. And I was like, well, let's start at the beginning, because this is the beginning. And I think the only way you can create effective brands and identity systems and logos is if you know where we start. And I think that's one of the things. I think for a lot of clients, that's the boring stuff. Do you know what I mean? Pretty logo, awesome fun. Awesome business cards, great fun. But figuring out that kind of underlying mission, vision statement, value proposition, whatever you want to call it, is the biggest hurdle I've found with clients, because it's something that they don't even think about. They're going to invest a lot of money. Let's start at the beginning and break it down, because that's the only way we can make money, is if we target the right people and speak to them in the right way and all these kind of things. So that's the biggest problem I've found, is that value proposition, that wanting to kind of be on stage 10 before they've even done stage 1, really. So
do you think, and this I notice also for us as designers, and I'm sure I am faulty of this too, which is, this is also, we are so good in telling other people what to do in a way. And then when it comes, we had this small conversation before, you say a lot of designers can't figure out a way to build a business with their tools, with their passion or with their skills.
Sure.
Is it probably the same, that we need to be a little bit more prepared and more, we have maybe to study a little bit more all of this process that is not the typography, is not the color, is not the composition, is thinking
Marketing,
critically.
finance. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I call it critical thinking, which is
Yeah.
something that, I've been teaching entrepreneurship to designers, and every time I open up the slide with the numbers, all my students went like, no, numbers. And I said,
Yeah.
look, let me explain this little thing to you.
The numbers are the most important thing.
If you can, and I share this story with them all the time. When I have a client that says, oh, let's say 100,000 is too much. And I said, okay, no problem. I'll do it for you for free.
Yeah.
And they are shocked. And I said, so how are you going to use this, especially the logo, right? I'm going to put it on my product. I'm going to put it on my business card. And I said, okay. So I'm involved. So the work that I do is involved in all sides of your business, right?
Yeah.
They go like, yes. Is it going to go on the box? Yes. Is it going to on the livery of the truck? It was, yeah. And I was like, perfect. So let's do this. I'll do the logo for free, but you give me 10% of your revenues.
Yeah.
And they go like, why? Because I said, because you said that I'm contributing to all of these operations.
Yeah.
Of all your business.
Oh, the success, right? The future success.
So why shouldn't I be part of that?
Yeah.
And then they realize, oh, but that's way too much. And I was like, oh, okay, so now you're realizing how important that piece of design or that piece of work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right? So how can we teach better to designers to understand that, we also try to shift from what is a time-based issue to what is called a value-based pricing.
Yeah, so, you're probably talking about much deeper brand strategy, which is, again, something that I'm not, it's something that I dabble in, but it's not something that super interests me. I like to leave that to the brainy people. I like to just create the logo stuff. But, ultimately, if we're talking about, ultimately, you've got to know your worth. Your time is worth money. And basically what you've got to do is you've got to equate the amount of time, effort, knowledge, and then that becomes a number. And that is your number. And you shouldn't be shifting too far from that number. You've got to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room, but for negotiating. But, if somebody's coming in and saying it's too expensive, then, I think what it is, it's about showing people, what this money makes. What this money creates. This. I've got a very good friend called Jacob Cass, who's a great brand strategist, and he uses like the analogy of like a house or a car, for example. So your logo is your paint job, or your logo is your foundation. But what happens? Where's all the rest of it? Where's the rest of the house? How's the car run? How does it get from A to B? And I think when you start to break it down, all the individual aspects of like the interior, the exterior of a brand, the values and the internal and external uses, I think that's when the money side does start to kind of, people start to go, hang on a minute, I can see this is taking, this is going to be months and months of work and hard work and, long days and all the rest of it. And I think, but it's such I'm trying to figure out what I'm trying to say here, get people to place a value on something that they can't tangibly see or can't touch or can't feel, is very, very difficult. So I think it's just about educating them and talking them through that process.
And also understanding that is not only, you probably can come up with a great logo idea in 5 hours, but it's not the 5 hours, is the
25 years before. Yeah. I think Paula Scher says that from Pentagram, is it? Yeah, she basically says, it's taken me 25 years to do it in 5 minutes. Do you know what I mean? So
exactly.
that's the thing. It is. And that's where also knowing your worth comes into it. I've done logos in half an hour before. I've done logos in 10 hours before. Sometimes they might take a bit longer, but my pricing always stays the same.
You know, if
Sure.
I do it in half an hour, I'm a win-win. You know, if I do it in 10 hours, that's fairly normal. Do you know what I mean? So, but it's all comes down to process and knowing your worth. And, you know, I don't say to my client, don't worry, mate, it only took me half an hour. Here's some money back, you know, because the reason that I've been able to think like that is because of all the hard work that's gone in,
Of
the
course.
hours that go in every single day, the educating myself, the long days, long nights, the crying in the corner thinking I'm not good enough, and all these kind of things we go through as a creative. But yeah, as I said, I mean, it's just pricing is such a, I mean, you'll know this as well as I do. I mean, it's such a weird thing within our industry that there is no right or wrong answer, but nobody's willing to kind of say what the right or wrong answer is, because it is always down to the individual, isn't it? You know,
it's down to the individual, and it's also down to the budget of the person and the budget of the company, and this is where, once again, this is where we can become a little bit more critical and become smarter to what we can offer and what we can get from into a company.
Sure.
And try to monetize that in different ways as well.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. Would you prefer one client who gives you 100,000 or 100 clients that give you 1,000?
Personally,
yeah.
If I could choose, and I tell you this out of experience, I would rather have 5,000 and like 5 big ones and 500 small ones. And I tell you why. Because having one big client that pays you a lot is a risky business.
Very much so, yeah.
Because, and I did it before. At the very beginning of my career, I started working for Fiat Group as a consultant. So basically, Fiat was such a massive client that it took everything. Like I could only work for them. That was very risky for the company because we were making 100% of our revenues out of that.
Yeah.
On the other side, having so many little clients, it's very time consuming. And I did in the very beginning of my studio years, because then you become a factory. So you need to, so if you focus on smaller client and smaller bills, it means that you need to turn up bills much quicker. So in my experience, I feel after 10, 15 years I was in the business, I found the right medium.
Yeah.
It was very different times. So the right medium for us was to have 2, 3, 4 clients on retainer.
Yep.
Because they were bigger company, but they were, for example, let me tell you, although we were a branding company, we did very little branding.
Yeah.
What do I mean? I mean that the big clients, they were doing more product branding, which was more an adaptation of their brand identity, or they had special projects that required the skills of design to adapt. So, for example, we did...
And they'd obviously have specific guidelines that you would have to stick to.
Well, we did the guidelines at the beginning.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
And then, we are launching an ice cream. So how do we apply that identity to the ice cream, although we were doing before cookies, for example, right?
Yeah. You've got cookies on the mind, by the way. What are these cookies?
I don't know.
I really want a cookie now. You keep mentioning them.
No, I don't know. I tend to use a lot of food analogies because
you're making me hungry.
No, but you know what? It's the one thing that everybody gets.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. So sorry, ice cream. So talk to me about the ice cream.
No, and you readapt that.
Yeah.
So, and this is the bigger the studio becomes, the bigger clients you do, the smaller classical identities you do.
Yeah, sure.
So for us, a good medium was to have that 2, 3 good clients that will have the retainer. This allowed me as an entrepreneur to pay the bills. Personally, in my personal practice now that I'm doing, although I love designing, but I'm doing less design and more teaching and coaching.
Yeah.
I coach a lot of design creative teams.
Mhm.
That's what I'm doing, even in creative studios. So because I've been teaching creatives for so many years, I rather have a mix. So
Yeah.
that's the perfect balance for me.
Yeah.
But this is me. I personally don't. uh, I get annoyed when I don't have the necessary time to dedicate for a project. So, and when you're on crunch of time because you need to get the business going,
Sure.
I don't enjoy that. There are other people, my friends, that they have their process nailed.
Yeah.
They're really good at it, and they turn around design like crazy, and they are super successful.
Yeah.
So, like you said, is like the process, right? Is something that
It's the most important thing
Yeah.
on the planet, I think, for
Yeah.
all creatives, is that nailing the process. You know, I mean, you've always got to tweak it.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're getting older, wiser, or stupider, whichever way we want to look at it. You know, we're always. I mean, I'm still. You know, I've been in my process, you know, for a good 10 years now with reference to logo design, but I still tweak it. It still gets little nudges here, nudges there, but the kind of backbone of it is very similar.
Yeah, I feel a lot of people are not embracing that. I mean, 41, and I am learning techniques of social media
Sure.
because I'm interested. And I said, and I'm not sure I'm gonna go on Instagram and probably, break the Instagram. And I noticed, for example, that for me it's really hard to deliver this pill content.
Yeah.
For me,
Sure.
I'm not saying that it's not possible. It's just I can't stand seeing another post that tells me what are the right hashtags to use.
Yeah.
Right.
You just unfollow them, mate. It's quite easy.
No, but they are very successful, right? So
yeah, I mean, there is, but it's with anything. There's trends. There's trends
sure.
and fashions, and as you all know, they come and go pretty quick. But they're also, funnily enough, a way of, I think some of the most successful people are the ones who can pivot quickly. Do you know what I mean? So something happens and they use their skills to pivot towards it, but they still keep all the goodness, but they pivot on it a little bit. And then, so when the trend goes, they can just move back and just carry on as normal. Because I know some people who make crazy money out of pivot.
True.
Yeah, this is hot, and they move, and they make crazy money. I mean, it tires me watching them do it. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
But they love it, absolutely love it. So I think it's one of those things that we've either got to. I think it's important to try and embrace these trends, but don't rely on trends. I think that's quite an interesting kind of concept. Using trends to your advantage, and making a new trend out of trends. What a cool thing that is. Do you know what I mean?
True.
But I know exactly what you mean with Instagram and the carousel stuff. Everybody's.
I'm trying, yeah.
Yeah, but people are regurgitating the exact same content in the exact same way. But what that does, it leaves opportunities for people to do it differently.
Yeah.
And when the people do it differently,
yeah. And like you, I always love the fact that, for example, you always write down your post. You don't.
Yeah, it's all hand drawn. Yeah, I mean, I'm an idiot. I shouldn't do it, but I do. I just did one a minute ago.
Does it take you a long time, or now it became something that you just do?
It takes me about half an hour just to kind of write them. I mean, I'm really annoyed at the moment because my favorite pen's run out, so I just had to buy a new one. But yeah, I just did a recent carousel, just kind of basically saying that this is a really good opportunity for, while we're at home, to build relationships and build, all these kind of things. And I basically said, show me your work. Comment, whatever it was. What is it? I'm not going to hide anymore, and I'll go and head to your feed and like one of your posts and all this kind of stuff, and go and leave you a comment. I've just looked. I've got something like 700 comments, so that's my whole weekend gone now. But it's important to, I mean, that's one thing. I mean, I think it's a really important thing that we can chat about super quickly is, times are tough. Times are very difficult. We are at home a lot by ourselves, but this is an amazing opportunity to build relationships for when we are out. You reached out to me. We are now friends. I mean, this doesn't. This is a great opportunity for people to reach out to other creatives, even if it's your friends, your family that you haven't spoken to. Reach out to them. Your message, your tweet, text, DM, or whatever it's going to be, phone call, might just make somebody's day. And I think it's such an important thing right now to embrace the opportunity rather than worry about the now, if that makes sense.
True.
Use this time to really, build long-lasting relationships. If there's a client that you really, really want to work for or work with or work in their agency, shout them up, give them a call, send them a message. Who knows what could happen? But I know what will happen if you do nothing.
Yeah,
absolutely nothing. Yeah.
So, James, I also saw that something very exciting is coming soon.
So I think a lot of people might have mistaked it for an actual book. I think there will be a book one day. But basically, I'm launching my own website very soon, which is basically madebyjames.co, and on there I'm going to have basically a newsletter, and I'm going to use that as almost like a mentoring tool. And within that, within the people on my newsletter, they get access to what I've called my logo black book, which is like basically once they subscribe to my newsletter, they get a load of free cool stuff. So I've got like guides on how to break down design briefs, guides on coming up with creative ideas, guides on mind mapping. So basically my process, lots of little tips and tricks. And so basically, and what I'm going to do is I'll just create like probably do like a weekly newsletter, but on those people are going to be able to email me, but I'm also going to do things like little challenges. I think I might call them games by James. So I'm trying
That's awesome.
But just really super quick tutorials that we can all engage together and grow together. And because I'd say like yourself, I mean, I've got this real love for helping people now and mentoring, and that's where I've slightly pivoted a little bit. As we're talking about pivoting, I mean, I love logo design. I love working with clients. Whether I can do it forever, I'm not too sure, because some clients are quite needy, but not all of them. But what I'm really finding is I'm doing a little bit of mentoring. I'm doing a little bit of, so I'm going to be doing a newsletter, starting the YouTube, and it's all for free, at the moment. I'm just kind of testing the water with it, seeing if it's somewhere I want to go. I don't want to charge anybody any money for it. I just want to kind of see where this kind of ride takes me, because obviously, I mean, eventually there will be content that will be monetized. If I'm putting months and months into a book, I can't give it away for free. If I do some of my personal deep dive, crazy video tutorials, they might be charged for. But, if you can't afford it, there's a load of free stuff here that you can have for total free. But
this is exactly the same process that I'm going through. Just the difference for me was I noticed that, after so many years in academia, I actually, I infused this knowledge into the lecture. I was teaching typography, but then I was talking about emotions and curiosity and why you should do that. But it was never formalized. I felt almost I was doing it, secretly, because it was not on the syllabi. So I'm going to give you these gems.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But,
I mean, sorry, carry on.
No. But there are a lot of basic skills that are never taught, which are creativity. Like, how do you develop this practice of creativity? Nobody talks about that. Focus, mindfulness, especially now. And I'm not a Buddhist monk or anything, but I did have my trouble, and I had a lot of people that I paid money to help me out of that. And I learned the practice, and I'm like, guys, mindfulness is very important. Managing your emotion is very important. 100%. And especially, when I worked with a lot of 20 years old, 19 years old, where already that age, you're like, you're panic, and having somebody that tells you, okay, this is a way to do it. And that's not necessarily the job, right? So I need to teach you how a grid work and composition, but I always felt that was not the role of a true educator. No,
Yeah,
so
I mean, for example, I don't read books on logo design. I read books on psychology. I read books on forming habits. I read books on mindfulness, because all of those things, help me understand myself better. They also help me service my clients better because I can understand where they're coming from because, I've kind of I've figured out who I am. I can figure out who they are, the way their personality works, how their mind's working, how to facilitate certain difficult situations, how to, mold certain situations to your advantage, which you will have to do, everybody. There's no trick. There are ways that, as a designer, you have to be in control of the process. You cannot let your clients generally lead the process because that's when it goes crazy wrong most of the time. So yeah, there's lots of things you can use, but I mean that's something that I would definitely say is, whenever a designer comes up to me or a logo designer, for example, says what books should I read, and I go, I read everything. I read I don't have any specific. I don't just stick to logo books. I go to architecture. I go to history. I go to graffiti. I go to tattoo art. I go to psychology. I go to calligraphy, Japanese writing, kanji. All of these things, because having a broad knowledge and absorbing all that stuff from different cultures, different industries, really opens up your mind to possibilities, especially creatively.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
James, I think we covered a lot of ground.
We did, didn't we?
And I know you don't have a lot of time left, so thank you so much. If we can just wrap up in 3 key points, I think we can say, number 1, everyone has a different process, so just try to dedicate the time to find your own way and find what works for you.
Yep, 100%.
Keep on knowing your worth, and whatever road you have taken, it's part of your growth. So you have to do that, and also you have to inform yourself beyond the obvious and lead your clients, lead the people in your process. Because if you let's say you have to be the captain of the boat in a way, because otherwise everyone will steer you away, and if you just cave, then you will be frustrated. Probably the client will be frustrated, because if they go and they choose to hire a brand designer, logo designer, graphic designer, a creative in general, you have to explain to them what the worth is. And then last but not least, and I would love every single student and everyone that is in the graphic arts to follow at Made by James, because the craft brings so much more value, and you need to show that craft. Doesn't need to be by hand necessarily, but it's the process. Show those 1,000 logos that you have done, even if you have done it in a digital form. Show your pictures. Show the crazy poster that you took inspiration from.
Exactly. So, I mean, and that's the other thing, is seek inspiration from everywhere. Don't limit your mind to anything. I think the thing about the creative industry is that there are no rules. So don't set yourself any.
So thank you so much, James. If we want to find you, for sure, Instagram, Made by James. And
yes, correct. Then YouTube, Made by James. I'm going to have my website launching soon, which will be made by. So yeah, you can find me anywhere. I'll be floating around the internet somewhere, no doubt.
And of course, references and links in the page of the podcast. James, thank you so much. I can't wait that we can actually get together and have that beer.
It'll be a great laugh.
Yes.
I really appreciate you getting me involved, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Make sure you stay safe.
Yes. And maybe we can share. I have a tool that I call my secret sacred grid. that when I am in block, I ask people to sketch 100 logos. I want to share that with you and see what happens.
Crikey. Yeah, no worries. Sounds fun.
Yes. This is GLC Live. I'm Gianluca Cinquepalmi. Special thanks to James Martin. If you enjoy this podcast and videocast, please subscribe and comment to our podcast, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. So for references and links, please visit glc.live. Thank you very much.